So hopefully you didn't miss it. Yesterday, another part of the Guild Wars Graveyard went up. I'd had that scheduled for release, and in that one, I was talking about specific areas of the game, among other things, that were cut. Interesting subject material is the whole mini playlist is really about. Just so that you guys know, what I've done here is, over the space of 4 days, I produced that whole playlist. I think it's maybe 6 videos, maybe 7, something like that. And I have them scheduled for going up every 3 days. That's so that I could save my time this week and next working on something new for you. Those are going to be the videos after the last day dawns. I couldn't dedicate something wholly new without videos going up in the meantime, and that's really what I settled on. But I'm going to take a pause of what I'm doing at the moment to instead talk again about the Graveyard for a quick update today, as I made some mistakes in the last video, which I do want to explain. I guess cranking them all out in quick succession does mean the odd thing's going to slip through the cracks. So here, I'll try and pick those back up. I'm going to platform some of the response I got over on Reddit. You guys can think of this as something like a part of the floor, but I'm going to see how this goes. I don't know whether I'm going to want to make a habit out of videos like this, because to be honest, a lot of the stuff I'm going to respond to here is really petty and picky and whiny. A lot of the time dealing with just one person. And so doing almost a whole video responding to like what one dude thinks about shouldn't matter. Seems somewhat disproportionate to me. I know some YouTubers probably get real kicks out of that and just farm views with it. That's really never been my style, as hopefully you guys have seen over the past 10 years doing Guild Wars 2 stuff. So we'll see. Anyway, there are very real mistakes that I made and very real points to get to, so I want to set the record straight. And as I said at the start of the year, I'm experimenting with doing different kinds of videos. So let's jump in. First of all, very fair comment from Tannen Falcon Wing, who says, how on earth did someone like WP manage to make such an error like he did in the Dragon Stand section? The area he points to is not the beta 4th lane, but the path for the story mission. The beta lane is on the north side of the map and is very expansive. You're right, the area I was drawing all over, oh, so confidently, and looking back now, so cringily, was totally wrong. It's not the bottom area of Dragon Stand, it's the top area. If I'd spent a little more time on the video, one of the things I kind of wanted to do was explore it for you all. I'm not sure if it was in that same part I was talking about the Cerebro Caledon Forest thing. I mean, I've covered a ton of topics already. I don't remember which information is appearing in which part, but I'm guessing this is all the same video. But for that specific piece of information, you saw I actually climb on a Springer and go up and give you guys a bit of a sight with it. And I suppose going to the Dragon Stand area would have been a good idea and would have immediately made me realize that no, I'm talking about the wrong place. By the time Heart of Thorns came out, I had stopped being interested in map breakouts and void jumps and all that stuff I did in the early days, but I have broken out of the map before and explored the lane. So it's just so stupid that I flubbed this, but my memory of breaking out up there was I did it from the smoke scale section while you're doing the machete run after Dragon Stand is over, and it was largely lots of big open spaces that you can't really get a good sense of in the limited airtime I was giving that one topic in that one video. The thing is, I was falling out of love with that stuff during HOT, and then with POF they added mounts and all the new invisible walls, which, I'll be honest, I haven't dedicated myself enough to scraping against them all and figuring out what breakouts are still valid and which ones aren't. I don't know how to break out of the Dragon Stand anymore, not unless I found a way under the map. Here, on today's video, I guess I'll put some footage of me trying that. It will be thrilling to watch, I'm sure. If I was doing a whole video about the idea of a lane, I obviously would have had footage there. This mistake never would have come through. It's so stupid as well, because the area I was looking at is obviously the actually implemented story section. That's where you run through right towards the end of the Heart of Thorns campaign. I guess it goes to show how long ago it was that I actually did that mission. Christ, what, is Heart of Thorns half a decade old now? Is that only 4 years? But yeah, if during that mission you're not paying attention to the dialogue or the gameplay, you take the time to open the map, you will see you're in the bottom right. And I guess I forgot that over the past 4 years. Came back to bite me in the arse here. I do apologize. Now, here's the thing. In response to that, we have this Lonami guy, who's all over this thread like a fly on shit, who presents a bunch of their own suppositions as fact. And I do think it's quite interesting. So they say, Dragon Stand never had a 4th lane. It's just a rumor that makes no sense whatsoever. The whole map is designed around events from the previous 3 maps. This is true. Each lane is directly tied to one of them. North, you can think of Auric Basin, because it's got the Exalted and the Skrit. Central is tied to Verdant Brink. Now, they don't have any justifications for that at all in their message, but I tend to agree. If you look at the events there, it's more flamethrowery and scrap metal and it's all stuff and generally feels kind of Verdant Brinky. South is tied to Tangled Depths. It's got the ogres, the Chuck. I think that's all fair. The islands of the final battle host NPCs from the previous maps, as I mentioned in the video, including 2 characters scrapped from the Auric Basin, Box and Duchess Chrysantha. Now, obviously, we talked about Chrysantha in the video and suggested she was from the 4th lane. Now, it's really funny because in the original cut of that video, I had a hasty little comment about BOX as well. BOX is a second mysterious character that doesn't appear in the story or anywhere before, just is kind of there. He's a golem and he doesn't really say anything and is obviously just through nameplate not as interesting as the idea of a whole new Duchess for the Nightmare Court. Anyway, in the original run of the video, I did mention BOX and suggested he might have come from the 4th lane too, but later I got cold feet because I wasn't sure if he was actually a part of the Ratanovus golems and didn't verify it on the wiki. So I didn't want to risk having it in the video. Something quite ironic because I think someone in a moment on this Reddit thread is going to suggest I'm lazy and not really doing my due diligence. Well, here today, looking properly, yes, BOX is a random mysterious character who I will now reinstate my original comment. I'm going to suggest could have been a part of the 4th lane. This guy says it's from Auric Basin, and that Chrysantha's from Auric Basin, which is very weird to me because I can find no dev comment or statement anywhere that either of these characters had anything to do with the Auric Basin. BOX in particular is really hard to Google information for because he's Box, and most MMO players are not interested in this subject whatsoever that I'm making a video on. They're interested in champ bags and loot, and so you get a ton of responses to do with that. All that said, I think BOX is most likely to have been a part of the Ratanovus map, surely? Considering the existence of that type of golem and hell, the whole hidden city isn't really established during the Auric Basin storyline. So I have no idea what this person's trying to say here, really. I know that's a pretty nitpicky response of my own, but I think it's going to be totally valid as we go through this video, believe me guys. Then he rounds out with one last fact, which I do think you can get some interesting discussion out of, which is that there are 3 Mordrim commanders, 1 per lane. The suggestion here being, well, how could there have been a 4th lane if there was only ever 3 commanders? Would the 4th lane have just oddly not included one? It's a great suggestion, and it's particularly damning to the 4th lane theory because we know even from a very early stage in Heart of Thorns development, there were going to be these 3 commanders, and the idea was going to be that they would slowly filter into you through the story until ultimately then you fight them here at Dragon's Stand. They are here in Dragon's Stand, but the filtering in, most of that main story content got cut. Only Stave Master Adrian actually got that development. If you remember, she appears right near the start in Act 1 of Heart of Thorns. A lot of this information comes from the AMAs I extensively covered back when Heart of Thorns came out, when the devs would do them on Reddit, and in particular the lengthy responses Barefoot Matthew had to the various story beats and what got cut out. You remember he even did a couple of responses to my story review of Heart of Thorns itself. So I am familiar with this subject material. In fact, here's precisely what he said about the commanders. That they would show up in the story. It was actually the plan to have them show up 1 per map in the missions leading up to Dragon's Stand. But Diarmid and Harith were both trimmed from the story for scoping and pacing reasons. So the studio reveals all this information about what was cut and how early these things were planned, but doesn't think to tell us that there might have been a 4th one that then was going to be to do with a 4th lane. Doesn't seem likely. And listen guys, they put a lot of work into these commanders. There's concept art and renders that have come out over the studio over the years, yet nothing resembling a 4th. So like I say, this is all pretty condemning. It's a good argument for there not being a 4th map. It's not the whole story, and you can't arrogantly say it's ridiculous to believe there was a 4th lane. But equally, I see the argument. The user rounds out by saying, so what was the northern area for? Probably some kind of scrapped story instance or leftovers from early prototyping. Definitely not something you'd visit in the open world, that's for sure. I can't believe it's been 5 years and people still believe the 4th lane was a thing. I'll tell you why people believe the 4th lane was a thing. Because there's a 4th lane in the map. There's a giant trench traveling from the starting camp area to the later camp area. Now, I've got to be honest, this response is a particularly baffling take to me, as they offer no solutions. An area for prototyping? Definitely not something you'd visit in the open world? Why definitely? It's unfinished. What's confusing you about that? Another user later in the thread does come up with an idea that maybe when you chose between Logan and Zodja, that was going to determine a completely different area of the map that you might have ended up in, and then that got cut out, which I kind of love as an idea. But that's no more valid than just saying that Dragonstand was going to have a fourth lane, which it looks like. To so arrogantly open by calling everyone else ridiculous is ludicrous. I don't care how many years this guy has had to entrench himself in this opinion. It is completely fair to believe in a fourth lane of the Dragon Stand. I will say that my video shouldn't have been so dogmatic and black and white about it. I honestly thought there had been a public dev statement at some point over the years, and there hasn't. If I had that in mind as I was running through the conversational commentary or the subsequent edit, I would have refactored things. I'm making this video now to try and set that right. My suggestion, which I've gone over in multiple videos and streams before, and kind of only glossed in this video, again, because we weren't dedicating a video to the topic, is to do with the Nightmare Court. I think it was probably going to be a Nightmare Court lane that would have explained where Chrysantha came from, and also can explain where a fourth Blighting Tower might have factored in without having a champion. It's possible it would have been Corrupted Foul Lane or something to do with the Nightmare Court. Doing our due diligence and going back to what Matthew said years ago, he does suggest they wanted to do more with the Nightmare Court and Foul Lane, but it kind of sounds like he specifically meant in one of those early story missions, so it's hard to tell where they were going there. We do know that in the end, Foul Lane does feature in the area I was actually drawing on for the story mission in the video. And then you have Malik, which was 100% confirmed to be a cut branch of the Heart of Thorns story. And had all of that content got in, I'm sure there would have been enough NPCs and space to have had this fourth lane factor into something meaningful. By the time the game came out though, none of that stuff was relevant. What cannot be denied though is the mysterious appearance of the Duchess in Dragonstand, a map with a ton of half-implemented stuff that looks a lot like a lane. Offering my own counter-argument to this debate and denying the existence of a fourth lane, I actually mostly just question how it would have connected. Yeah, people have done mock-ups in the past of how it might have looked, but I'm just not that convinced. Maybe it would have had something to do with the double exit situation over at Tangled Depths, both taking you to the Dragon Stand, but plopping you out in the same area. I don't know. I doubt this guy's even thinking about stuff like that. The conversation goes on here. You guys can pause the video if you like. There's some great debating here, including the classic, prove it. No, you prove it. He explains that the fourth lane bullshit theory was just back when people were looking for excuses to shit on HOT's release. And somehow 5 years later, people still propagate that idea without thinking of its validity. So all things said, I hope we got a good discussion here. The next user, in response to this parent thread, goes for a more personal attack on me, which apparently a few people agreed with, which is that for a long time now, Wooden Potatoes lives in a bubble. He doesn't fact-check things very well, especially when it comes to visual design, assets, and maps, because, as he says, he isn't good with that. And someone says, that ruins the point of him doing the graveyard. This is historical information. He should be fact-checking before sharing it. Why bother discussing lost content if he won't even put in the legwork to do it right? And then more people chime in to explain I'm cynically doing it for views and clicks. You know, I really hope I'd earned a bit more respect over 9 years of doing this. To the last of that, I do want to say, if I was on YouTube covering Guild Wars 2 for clicks, you would be seeing annual newcomer guides and annual state of the game videos and gold making guides and legendary weapon crafting guides and all that stuff that actually does generate a lot of traffic easily. Most of which I never do or really slack on, like Stake at the Games. The reason I did a video on this was because yes, I wanted stuff to upload for you guys as I'm trying to do this for a living and trying to get steady content out after I had a break, but because this subject material is actually interesting to me. It's niche subject material that I absolutely do not have to share or talk about with you. As for me living in a bubble that doesn't fact check visual design, assets, and maps, I don't know what assets and maps means. You're deceptively, supposedly quoting me here as being blasé about fact-checking. You've misled the next person in the comment chain, and that is completely untrue. Of course I fact-check. Of course I put in the legwork. You make it sound like I don't care about what I do and just try to cover my ass by saying, oh, well, I'm not good at that. Which is a total fabrication. If you have a big enough body of work, eventually things will slip. As for what I have honestly said before that I'm genuinely not that good at and you should probably take with a grain of salt is when I'm talking about fashion wars and skins. Is that what you mean by assets? I'm not into the cosmetics much, and I have made blunders over the years, where someone can look at a piece of armor and say, oh, that's human T2 or non-T3 or whatever. I can't do that. I don't spend that much time in the panels. And yeah, it's bit me in the ass once or twice ever before, but only in really stupid ways, like the time I got sent the Eternity statue but thought it was Khaled Bolg just before Heart of Thorns came out. So I made a whole video, realized it was the wrong sword I was looking at, and had to delete a whole day's work. If that's me living in a bubble, if I'm in a bubble because I don't have immaculate recollection of an expansion that came out 5 years ago, and so I drew on the wrong area of Dragon's Sand, then fine, I guess. I'm in a bubble. How about you link me your vastly superior collection of videos on cut content from the game? Lona Me returns by saying, I appreciate enthusiasm for the topic, but he's made plenty of mistakes. He didn't even understand how chat codes are supposed to work in one of the previous videos, which shows he didn't really research the topic properly. He just took chat codes and previewed them without understanding where they came from. So it is true that chat codes are really kind of quite complicated, and I've never properly looked into how to generate them and how to find things under the hood. There is a wiki page you can go to kind of get the fundamentals, but I've never spent the time with that. That said, I'm not sure how that invalidates anything on the previous video while we're looking for pole arms and stuff. The person who said I live in a bubble comes back and says, I can't imagine how annoyed you must have been when he was previewing all the pole arms and stuff in that video with chat codes that came from your post, and said thanks to the anonymous person who set this up. Like Jesus, how stuck up one must be to not even credit people properly. Like IDK, maybe it's a YouTuber thing, but I really feel like he refuses to recognize a huge part of the community, even the big names, just because they aren't on YouTube. So here's where my response video, I'm starting to wonder if I should do it, because to me, this just looks like some random guy has an axe to grind. Clearly, something else is going on that I have no clue about. And like, why air his dirty laundry or feelings of neglect or whatever that is that's going on. But I do want to apologize for not crediting the imgur album. So I have a file on my desktop where I throw random notes and ideas for videos. It includes almost anything you can imagine, whether that be lore or gameplay mechanics or even weird stuff. All that matters about this file is that the ideas are timeless and won't necessarily be made or broken based on current Guild Wars 2 news and current happenings. The idea is that if I want to wake up and make some Guild Wars content, I can look at the list and immediately have the inspiration because of ideas that have excited me in the past. One of the ideas that's been on the list for a long time is this Graveyard series, and I've compiled over the years various links. Those links I then supplemented and reinforced with my own wikiing and looking after the Stalker trailer came out with the Sunqua Peak. One of the sections I had included a link to an imgur album. There is no username on the imgur album or anywhere specific to credit. That's why in the video, I said thanks to the anonymous person. Apparently that wasn't good enough for Mr. I'm in a bubble. Instead, I had to remember that apparently this was a part of a Reddit thread from well over a year ago. The user that compiled all of that was none other than this Lona Me person. So in all sincerity, thank you for that resource, and I'll have a link to it in the description here. The Reddit thread, by the way, has way more information about different things than my video did, so I do recommend people check it out. I hadn't personally seen this Reddit thread and forgotten all about it until just this afternoon. I do wonder if I hadn't bothered including in the commentary anywhere, thanks for the post, this person calling me stuck up would have even been prompted to think about any of this. But hey, I do apologize for saving the imgur link rather than a Reddit one. I suppose I did imgur because I thought it'd be a bit quicker and easier for my reference later down the line. Oh boy, I was wrong. So 2 more choice community responses here of mistakes in the video that were worthy enough to comment on. Ben C said, I'll let him off, but he also points to the raid from Bloodstone Fen going to Brisbane, though the Bastion is a lot further north. Yes, at one point in the video, I did mention that now there's a raid entrance at Bloodstone Fen. It takes you to Bastion. Sorry, I didn't scroll all the way up past Brisbane and I moved on to the next topic too quickly. Lonami says he also misplaces the entrance to the Tomb of the Primeval Kings, pointing to the pyramid at the East Crystal Oasis. An alleged lore master shouldn't be making such ridiculous rookie mistakes. Yes, I also apologize for this. I went to the Crystal Desert and instead of mousing over the Tomb of the Primeval Kings, I went slightly too far to the south. The Tomb of the Primeval Kings is the top right of the Desert Highlands. I overshot that and went a bit further down. Sorry, I mean really, what do you guys actually think that I believe the Tomb of the Primeval Kings is entered below that pyramid? Is that really the level that we're at? Should I be responding to this? But listen, this alleged lore master thing, I've never called myself a lore master. I don't even define myself by the lore and story. People just ask me to cover it a lot. And what's more, I've never heard anyone else call me a lore master either. I mean, really, look at these rookie mistakes that I make. Who could ever do that? Last treasure trove from Lonami here. First says, the sea monster is a leviathan. They've been established in lore for quite a while. Now, that message doesn't necessarily contradict my video in any way. He seems to think that just because it has a wiki page, which aggregates various pieces of information, that means it's this big, tangible thing in lore. And if you actually look at the first-party source itself, the game, there's really very little on them. But I'll excuse that mistake. Most people make it. I do want to pause here to talk about this a little more, though, because I did kind of make a mistake here, and we got some good discussion down in the YouTube comments, which overall were a real pleasure. Now, some people thought that I'd made a mistake. At the end of the trailer, that giant fish creature is in-game. A lot of people believed it to be the champion Fluffy, that enormous armored fish you fight in Mount Maelstrom. But it's important to note that it is different. My mistake, really, is, again, a bit like with the Dragon Stand location thing, forgetting that I already knew about this. That shaman, as always, as he often does, produced an incredible resource a long time ago, comparing the size and scale of different creatures, and even mined this thing out. So yeah, it is true, as I present in the video, that creature is not in-game as a fightable, living, breathing NPC. And I've even had conversations with you all about it before due to mining. Maybe one day, particularly with End of Dragons, we'll get to see it. I think disputably the model is very similar to some stuff we've already had, but the size and the experience as presented in the trailer, certainly there's no match for it in the game as of today. Then they say again that Dragon Stand never had a 4th lane, it's a scrapped story instance, which they're just supposing but presenting as fact. Also, it's not southeast but northwest. As for the scrapped Nightmare Court story, it was bound to happen at the Auric Basin, not the Dragon Stand. Finally, the Hall of Heroes isn't under the Riverlands. It's part of its own map together with Cormier's Library and Kesho, so you can't visit it in-game by going under the map or anything like that. So many mistakes, ... So let's talk about the Hall of Heroes. So I mentioned in my video that it kind of lined up and was underneath the Ellen Riverlands. I did that because in the original album of images Shaman had mined out that I was talking about in the video, he specifically said it lined up with the Ellen Riverlands on the map. So yes, my commentary, I guess, was a bit imprecise here. It is not actually under the map. You can't break out and, like, swim in the water, the void underneath, and then explore that place. Clearly you can't, because in the same video, the screenshots I showed later have it clearly facing out in open sky. It's under the map in the same way that, like, many of the dungeons are under the map. You know, when you're in the Ascalon Catacombs, it's not actually under the Plains of Ashford. That is where the map chose to overlay it. But yes, imprecise commentary I am guilty of. The rest of this nonsense, I hope, doesn't matter that much. If you want to hear more about the Hall of Heroes, I've obviously already done a video on that back when the comments from Connie, I think it was, talking about POF and cut stuff from POF went on, and those AMAs, all of which are up on the channel and we went through the first time. And finally, we have the user Be Kind to Strangers, who is very mean about a stranger and says Wooden Potatoes is extremely insufferable when he disagrees with something the community believes in. So, I don't know, maybe some people watching this video today are all feeling that way, listening to me now. I don't know what originally prompted this guy to say that. Was it the whole human-female idol thing and the sexism discussion, which I did have some people on YouTube kick back and suggest that the explicit dev comments to the contrary were full of shit, and that's fine if people want to feel that way. Or maybe something else. In any case, there you have it. Look, my tone has been really hoity-toity and frustrated and argumentative and douchey in this video, and I really don't like that much, but I guess I'm just frustrated and sad. I thought I was sharing something exciting and fun, and in return, I'm basically having insults thrown at me, a lot of them unjustified. I do know that the vast majority of people are chill and cool and respectful, and that realistically, nothing that was said here really matters that much. But hopefully I set the record straight, especially on any real mistakes made. And hopefully the conversations will remain fun and upbeat. I was amazed to see as many people watch that first episode of The Graveyard as they actually did. If you saw in the comments there, I dropped a message saying, look, I think most people aren't interested in this stuff, but I am, so let's go for it. And yeah, it really stings to see it take such a sour turn here. I don't generalize the Reddit for what it's worth. I know it's very easy to say, oh, the Reddit's gone downhill, and I do think there have been certain moments, particularly after the Guild Mag stuff in 2014 and the Super Adventure Box, where I've noticed a shift in the Reddit, but generally speaking, I don't like generalizing it. I think the Reddit is still an awesome, decent place to be. It just kind of depends what time of day and who's around and what's happening there. You guys can still feel free to share my stuff on it. As you know, I've never shared my stuff on the Reddit, but I've always thought it was a valuable place, and hopefully it will still be fun to use going forwards. But I guess time will tell. If I can get anything constructive out of this video, I just want to remind people that I'm not perfect. I don't know what kind of godlike, ridiculous standards some people are looking for, but I am one man on my own trying to scratch a living doing this. I do my best. I am trying. I always have. Really. Thanks, everyone. Any further ideas about the fourth lane or the Hall of Heroes or any of this stuff that you guys want to add to the discussion, I will eagerly read. And until the next time, as always, take it easy, guys. Thanks for watching.